have no hair. That kind of thing is really,
I think Jess can address that. She got a remote for it or something.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Tonight's August 3rd meeting of the Master Plan Committee called to order at 6:01 PM. Could we get a motion for approval of the agenda?
Are there any changes?
There are no additional changes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
and I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Items to discuss and respond to the planning board input on chapters 3 and 5 and the action plan that we discussed at our workshop last night. So, hi Tara, we're gonna let you take it from here.
Do those of you that were there want to kind of give you general impressions of how the meeting went first? I thought it was a good discussion finally. And we got through, I think, enough of the plan to get a good sense of where the planning board is at. There were definitely some frustrating moments in at least two members are going to need a better understanding of what the master plan is for and what it's not. I think we should make sure that when we present the plan, I think we have a September date penciled in for that we start with that. You know, here's not just here's the plan, but here's what the plan is for, and here's what it's used for, and here's what it's not, because there was, you know, some people that thought it was like a law as opposed to a plan. And for them to be able to evaluate it fairly, they need a clear understanding of what it's used for and what it's not. So that was just an observation that I made.
I think that's a great idea.
I think that's a very observant observation. I agree with it.
The suggestion of an executive summary is not a bad suggestion at all.
They kept talking about last night, bringing up, referring to legislate or legislation or something like you said, law. And we were trying to get across them that no, it's not, but then they kept picking it apart and reading it and saying this is binding and so on and so forth, and it's not. And I think, yeah, if we if we start with that saying it's not binding, it's not, these are suggestions, then I think if the next time we meet with the planning board and it's brought up, we can just refer back to the preface that, no, these are suggestions.
I agree with that as well.
You guys were missing the meeting last night. I don't know who was here. Is everyone here?
So at the meeting last night was Roger Sample, Scott, Brock, Jessica, Doug Brown, myself, Tom Divney, and did I miss anybody?
How about Bill?
I was there.
I'm Bill, I'm sorry. Well, because Bill's here now, it's like it's right out, so I apologize. So we did get, and Drew. And Drew was
And
here.
Drew,
Yeah, so we had a good representation.
Majority of the planning
It was a
board, yeah.
majority of the planning board. We had a good representation.
So we weren't supposed to be there.
No, it
as-
was just a planning
it
board
was the planning
workshop.
board workshop.
Kelly attended as the
Right.
chair and I
But
was there.
most-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Unlike the first
Yep.
session we had, most of the members were in attendance, right?
Yes, and there was, as Tara said, some lively discussion, so I do
Yes.
feel, I agree with Tara, we got more information from the planning board this time around, but still, we still kind of need to maybe do a better explanation of the master plan itself, like Bill and Tara have been discussing,
And-
because
and I-
some of them kept referring to it as legislation
Mm.
or binding or things like of that nature, and that's not what the master
It's not
plan
what it
is.
It's guidance.
Right.
It's direction.
And I can, in the planning board meetings, you know, just kind of reiterate to the other planning board members when it is coming, when we get finished with the other chapters to, when we have them, please read them.
Yes,
That was another big problem where
yes.
they didn't read them. And even it was brought up that, well, I'd like time to read it. Well, you've had it since May, you know,
Yes.
Jess said that you've had it
And
since May
we've
5th.
already had one meeting.
So I don't have a problem with making it clear when they do get that to please read them and just keep on them to say, hey, we may have another session, make sure you read it
Right.
so that you're well versed in it. And
I think Drew would be in the best position to get that point across to them.
I think as many people that can reiterate it as well.
I
You know what,
I don't think
I
it's gonna
think they need
hurt.
that.
Drew has a good understanding and a good basic knowledge of what
Yeah.
is going on.
Mm.
Correct.
And
But
A good, reminder for Drew to give them is that when they notice the public hearing, it's them that people are gonna be asking questions about what's in there.
That's a good
Right.
point.
So
Right.
they really need to be able to answer those, right? It's not,
That's what we'll say.
it's right, 2 years of all your hard work. It's the planning board's master plan.
Right.
They're the ones that have to answer to the
I
public.
think
That's right.
that would be helpful if it came from a different person, because I feel like sometimes that's helpful.
Yeah,
I don't mind at all. I don't
Thank
mind
you.
saying something
yes,
more than once.
thank you.
And they are the audience, right? They're the ones that are gonna be held accountable, but they're our audience. So I think we did learn some things from last night about some tweaks to make it to the language here and there to make them more comfortable. And maybe we can look at how to clarify and, strengthen some of the, I didn't have time today to look back at the preface stuff, but, let's make sure we have language in there to point to about the role of the master plan and.
the other thing that I'm pretty sensitive to is that there's points of view on the planning board. Some folks have their own interest in, is the top of their list. And somehow we have to get past that.
That was kind of mentioned,
Mm.
to try to just look at it from an objective perspective.
Easier said than done.
But you know what, from a planning perspective, it's really helpful to have people involved in construction represented on land use board
Absolutely.
too.
most definitely.
Because I often, when I write regulations, run them by surveyors and engineers that I know for that reason. They're the ones that are gonna have to make these work, and I can look at a dozen examples, but I still don't know what's reasonable for a boundary marker unless I run it by a surveyor friend, right?
Right. I think Bob's more to the point of it on a personal level as opposed to the perspective from that profession.
Yeah, more personal than professional.
Yes.
Exactly. And in my experience, you have to somehow normalize the level of the voices and keep make sure that the loudest voices aren't just
I
a
thought,
couple of people.
I thought last night's meeting went fairly well.
That's good.
Considering, with everybody that was here, and it was, I thought it went fairly well. And we came back with some really good takeaways out of it that we'll discuss tonight. So,
It didn't get heated at any point or anyone get
Yeah, a little bit.
slightly.
Yeah,
A little bit.
A little.
I think it did.
Yeah, I did a little bit.
I'd be surprised if it hadn't.
I mean, I always feel it's a little bit tough. I have a few strikes against me to try to manage a meeting like that. One is they don't know me. Another is I'm not there in person. And there's always a little bit of, well, no offense to anybody in the room, but there are some male volunteers who will mansplain to me, even though I've been doing this 30 something years. So, it's tough, but I think we did come out of it with the input that we needed. So I feel like we did.
I agree.
On your list, the very first item, that's something that I saw, and I took that as being very good news.
And that was pretty much
Yeah.
a consensus
That was
of the room.
100% of
Yeah.
everybody in the room.
In the room.
Yes,
Yeah, and
Because that had been a very contentious
Yes.
item in
Yeah.
town.
yes.
Yep. So if we want to go to the list, I'm going to go ahead and put my copy on the screen so I can make notes as we go along.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
uh,
And
And you can start us off, Tara. Thank you.
And we'll go just down through the list and I'm gonna make notes of whether I'm doing this thing or somebody else, or you want to talk more about it, or, let's follow up on each of these items and you guys who were there, chime in with anything you think I left out. So, yeah, I'm not really sure where we put the recommendation about rejoining lakes. Any thoughts on that? Should we put it in the general ones at the beginning?
Yeah,
Yeah, right in the
I
beginning.
think right in the beginning, right in the
Well-
general.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Right in the beginning, and I think maybe put some, put the value to it as far as how it will help the town.
Yes.
Mhm.
I think that's
Because I
really
think that was,
excellent.
it was the, from what I understand, it was the
Select
planning,
board.
the select board that actually took us out of it.
Yeah,
And there was some
Yes.
discussion through citizens in the town, so on and so forth. So I think if we put it, yes, recommended that we join, and here's the reasons why,
Yes.
of what, what we're getting for bang for our buck, so on and so forth, or what we can get, what they can help us with. to
so
make-
where do you think, I mean, I could see it would go in the general section of the action plan, but where would, not able to think off the top of my head, or where that might go in the body of the plan itself? Do we have anything in there about, I usually put in something about regional organizations, not just LRPC, but there's a, there's a watershed group, there's an economic development group, regional corporation. and
Under chapter 2.1, the goals.
That's what
Yeah,
I
that would be
potentially.
good, yeah.
Let's do it with my notebook.
was gonna say that, but I didn't know if it was like,
Mhm.
Do I already have it in there as a goal, or are we adding it?
oh, I don't think so. Okay, corporate water quality. So number 4, under 2.1, protect and improve water quality throughout the town. If we sandwiched it, but, and made it number 5
Mhm.
as a follow-up to protecting.
So make number 4 kind of regional.
Or 4 could stay that way, but then we could make number 5 a suggestion or recommendation of joining the Lakes Region Planning Commission. And then,
Well, now we kind of be sticking it in the middle of the other water issues, and they don't really do that. Their main thing is economic development and transportation money. They'll probably be getting housing money.
okay.
Maybe it goes kind of more toward the end of the goals list, like,
Yeah, maybe it could just be number
Number-
17.
Yeah, at the very end.
Be fine. I didn't bring chapter 2 with me because I thought we were doing 3 and I didn't realize, so.
Yeah, that's-
Like next to last, maybe?
I was thinking next to last, yes. Right after the town's hazard mitigation plan.
Yeah, I like to make sure I write things in a way I'll know what it means.
Number 15.
Yeah.
That makes
We're gonna
sense.
Make it 16.
Make it
and
16 and
will be turned
17.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
Just need it back.
Yep, you got it. I won't even write on it.
Until all of a sudden he's doing it.
Oh, no.
All right, so the next one was kind of a formatting. There were some folks that only looked at the action plan and not the narrative and kind of said, well, why is this in here? And we had to keep pointing back to the narrative. And that's not something we're gonna be able to change. So I wondered if we should go ahead and put the policies and recommendations in with the topic and maintain this action plan as a separate document, maybe. They clearly didn't look at the pieces about different goals and whatnot in it. They're not getting that. So,
Right. I also think that is probably because most of them haven't read it. Or
Right.
they haven't read it thoroughly. And then last night was probably the first or only the second time that they had seen it. And because we as a group had started with the action plan, it was hard for them to correlate back
Correct.
to the plan because this was the first time that they had seen it. So we started going down the list of the action plan and they just couldn't coalesce it. So I think it can't hurt to have it in with the text, with the narrative, and also as a separate document.
Yep, and that way everybody has a spreadsheet at the end that, that says who's responsible and that you can sort and do search.
Kind of like an index, right? Does everybody?
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
You can update it every year too, like what's been done and what needs to happen. You could have a notes field of, right? You could do whatever you want with a spreadsheet. So let's just let that live separately. Get rid of the idea of having a final chapter with all the action items and put them with the text instead. Like,
All
they'll
right, so
follow
it'd
that
just
better.
be a total of the 5 chapters then. We wouldn't have, 6 chapters, we wouldn't have chapter 7 as a separate action plan.
You know the numbers better than me, but. Right, 6 would be infrastructure and be the last chapter.
Just be the same.
I'm good with that.
Unless, this is kind of way we go back to an executive summary, but let's hold on to that thought for now. Let's integrate in doc. And that's our audience, so we need to make it work for them. There was one member that thought it wasn't user friendly enough, and I thought we'd all really tried to do that. Does somebody wanna?
Okay, so,
I'm not sure how much easier you can make it to read.
Okay,
but
thank you.
That's my opinion. I mean, there was, and I think he just
Exactly.
didn't, I don't think he read it.
Yeah.
Because I was sitting next to him and I saw him and he's flipping through and and he's waving his hands and I'm ducking and, and as he was talking and it was Brock, and he was the one, he kept whispering, hey, this would be much easier to read. I said, you're having a hard time reading it? And
Can't simplify it much more.
I
Let's
really
not-
thought, and then he kind of came back around the other way and said, well, yeah, it is easy to read, but I think he wanted less material. And I don't see how we can do that,
no,
because we still have to add 6 and 7. I
think because Brock is newer
Yeah.
to his position, I don't think he really comprehended the full scope of what the master plan
Right.
is. And I don't think he realized how much information actually is contained in it.
Yeah.
And again, going back to, we started with the action plan first. So for somebody who hadn't looked at the
Right,
material
right.
first, they could not, they're
Right.
like, they're just looking at this action plan, like, what is this? Like,
Right.
change zoning? Like, why are we doing that? And then they get all,
And,
in
I'll
their
speak on
head.
behalf of that. I have to agree with you on that, and I have to agree that you're right about Brock. He was thinking, how can we reduce this and make it smaller and not so much to read? Because even I thought, this is getting growing and growing and growing, and I'm saying, even to myself, I said, are we putting too much?
Yeah.
Too much information? But no, we're not.
right.
It
Right.
has to be there.
Because the bullets, and that's the thing, when you take a page out that's bullets, that's pretty much what the action plan was. And,
Yes.
and they're like, what is this? And
Right.
it's all in here
Right.
and this explains it. But
Right.
really what we should have done was taken the action plan and say, here,
Read.
read this for,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
again, we
Yes.
have been telling them to read it.
And that's, and I would think that was probably 85% of the problem, is that they don't read
They
it. So
didn't-
when they come
right.
to the meetings, they think it's something else, or they knee jerk reaction thinking it's something else. And then you have to explain it.
Mhm.
And because they haven't read it, so you're trying to explain it and they go back and they're trying to follow you. And that's just difficult. It's like taking a test without having studied,
Right.
essentially.
But when I worked at Mass Water, we adopted a technique of formatting documents, big documents, in which every single paragraph had a heading next to it. It was heading, paragraph,
Mhm.
heading, paragraph. And you could follow where you were
Easier.
relative to the entire context. And it doesn't take that much effort to do the reformatting, come up with headers for each.
But a lot of
paragraph.
this
We
has
have
this.
headers.
This
It's
has
similar to
this.
what that is.
This has it. It's very easy reading.
Yeah,
I mean,
look,
I-
we have.
You just got to
chapter.
take the time.
I'm
It
talking
says
about the
chapter, it
person
says
who's
what
got
it's
a
about.
scanner.
It says 3.2 water surface,
Right.
surface water. I really think it's more the fact that when you're looking to interact and have a conversation with somebody and you're looking to discuss material, if only one party of the conversation has read the material, it's hard to have that conversation.
But you're gonna encounter that more often than
Right,
not.
but we're talking about meeting with the planning board. So that's a little bit different because
I
they've
hear you.
had the material for quite
And
some
I
time.
believe a lot of the planning board is not gonna take that much time to
Right.
read everything word for word, sentence to sentence, paragraph to
Well,
paragraph.
and
They're
I-
gonna browse through it.
But I would say this, when you think about the scope and the magnitude of what the master plan encompasses, it is a lot, but we're only asking the planning board to look at certain sections
Mhm.
of that.
Mhm.
Right now, that's what we're
Right.
feeding them is mostly like the zoning and things like
Right,
that,
right,
that are more sensitive,
Mhm.
you know, we'll say than other topics.
yes.
So I understand if you're gonna like kind of skim through all of the bulk of maybe
Mhm,
some things, but on things that like anything that was highlighted in the action plan, that's like something that you're gonna vote on, or, you know, that's like a real.
Hmm.
I do feel, I was disappointed that they had not read the material. I can't lie. Like, you're the planning board. We are here because the planning board asked,
To me.
you know, we're a subcommittee of the planning board. We've been meeting for almost 2 years. Could you please at least read the material that we've generated for
Mhm,
you so we can get some feedback?
Yeah, I mean, it's their tool. They adopt it and they use it, and that's really most of the purpose of it, right? The CIP committee will use the infrastructure section and so forth, but
My
they-
impression.
Okay.
Go ahead, Tara, I'm sorry.
basically the master plan is the planning board's recommendation for the growth and future development of the town. So they I don't know what to say if they don't read it.
I think one of the challenges that we all have is that the planning board historically kind of did their own thing, period. And now we're trying to give them some guidance and some framework to work within. And they're gonna, certain members of the board are gonna resist that.
They're gonna buck it.
I do feel that at the very end of the evening, when we were discussing some more of the hot topics, we did seem to come around to that it would at least be discussed and not just a no. It wasn't a hard no. That left me a little bit, you know, hopeful. And Drew felt strongly about some items as well. So I do feel that hopefully, like I do have a positive feeling maybe going forward. We'll see how that
Mhm.
progresses and how I feel next month. I don't know.
When's the next meeting
Um,
on that?
August 14th at 4:00.
So of who?
14th?
14th at
That's what it
4.
says.
That's what the agenda
What your
says.
agenda says.
It is.
Yeah, that's not right.
That
took my
No,
planner out.
because the 16th is Tuesday.
Our next meeting is at 4 on the 17th.
It's the 17th. Okay.
17th.
Okay, I'm
That
sorry.
was-
17th?
That was a typo.
Okay, so it is August 17th, Wednesday, August 17th at 4 PM.
That's for the planning board.
No,
No,
I
no,
don't-
no, that's just a
regular-
matter
your
of.
next meeting.
That's what I was asking though.
Oh, okay.
I
We have
wasn't,
Not yet scheduled
okay,
another workshop.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make it
Well,
confusing.
I mean,
We were
then
talking
we-
about the planning board.
Okay.
I was asking when the next meeting was for
Okay,
for
I
a
apologize.
workshop.
Okay.
September 20th is scheduled, my understanding, to present the plan to the planning board.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
I didn't mean to make that confusing.
So we have a lot of work to do before that. So let's, all right, I'm just gonna make a note to see if there's an opportunity for any more subheadings to on that. Jessica, can you find out the status of the GIS zoning layer?
Yes.
Because Josh had thought it would be ready over the winter and that would obviously make the zoning map page a lot clearer and if I could get access then of a real zoning map, I could put the proposed future land use on top of it, which is what they.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Well, the issue of when zoning's going to appear in the GIS system, I do know that work is currently underway, right?
Yes,
And I don't know what any of the dates are.
right. I think that's what Jessica's gonna try to look into.
So we want to talk about the word cloud since the chair of the planning board hates it and I
I really don't have another creative way. to-
That was a great little
What,
moment, I
what,
thought.
what was that?
Drew doesn't like the word
Oh.
cloud.
Yeah.
He
I
really
mean, he
dislikes the word
really
cloud.
like,
That was
He
Jer-
really
that
it
was
hit a
disliked it.
button or something.
Really
It-
disliked the
He
word
must have had a
cloud.
bad experience or something, because it really, like, he went off his, yeah. It
Really?
really hit a nerve. I mean,
That surprised me out of Drew.
I don't know.
yeah, I was really
Yeah,
surprised
it was
too.
funny.
He's, the way he started off, I thought he was gonna say, oh, that looks great. I thought it looks
Yeah.
great too. And he didn't. He went the
No.
complete opposite direction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in a good natured Drew way.
He was
you know what
laughing
I
about
mean?
it, but
Yeah.
he's like, I can't
I really
stand
don't like this, yeah.
It's like, wow.
So what
Well,
about
do you-
a pie chart or?
Yeah, do you want to wait and see?
But
if
don't
the
give it a
rest of-
label.
Uh,
You want to wait and see if the rest of the planning board feels the same way, or should we think about something else? Because I mean, I think it's a great infographic.
Just take the
Yeah.
label off.
Doesn't have a label.
You just know what it is.
Where's the word cloud appear?
It says the graphic called a word cloud shows the words or terms used by community members. Because we have to explain to people who are reading it what they're looking at. So we have to say that it's a word cloud. And for people that maybe might not understand.
Yeah, and it wasn't the word cloud he didn't like. It was the word cloud.
Can I go back to something that we just mentioned about the GIS?
Sure.
I have something here from Scott, if that's something you'd want to hear right now. That's actually in this report that I sent you, Tara.
Okay,
It's the road surface management system, GIS 360 degree mapping and condition assessment of all roadways, which gave a pavement condition index.
no, that's not.
That's not what you're referring to?
Yeah, I saw that. I did glance at the stuff you sent me. He's apparently the town has a contract to have the parcels digitized. And I spoke with Josh quite a long time ago about how easy it would be to get the GIS zoning layer to be part of that. And it sounded like he had already been on top of that and
Okay.
and had expected it this winter.
So then Jessica will continue to look into it. Thank you for that, Paul.
Yeah, I just sent him an email.
Okay.
Okay.
So can we just, what's the feeling? Do we find something else to, what do we do about the word cloud? I mean, he's the planning board chair.
he was the only one.
Yeah,
We really didn't hear anybody else say that they didn't like it either, or really that they did. I mean,
It was it just the word cloud he didn't like?
no, he doesn't like the word cloud. He doesn't like word clouds
word
in
clouds,
general.
period.
Oh,
He's
you
got,
didn't like-
In general.
Oh,
you know how like some
Yeah,
people don't
yeah,
like
in general, he
clowns?
In
just
general, he
does-
doesn't like
For
cloud.
anything, yes.
You
He
know,
does not like the
I
cloud.
He doesn't
don't know
like
another
using
way
cloud.
of-
Yes.
That's the best presentation I think I've ever seen of a survey result.
I did a little like quick Google today to see, and it continually came up as like number one was the word cloud. And I looked to see some other charting and some stuff was just the way they were displaying or explaining would not work for us. So that's why I said if we have to change it, maybe a pie or something like that. But honestly, I think since it was just one person, that we just leave it. I mean,
I'm
we're-
gonna write.
I would leave it. I would,
Kelly will defend it.
how we, how
Kelly
would we
will look at
defend
your
it?
names on there.
I
I'm
would.
writing
Just-
Kelly, these are my notes.
Yeah,
Kelly
she's
will
on there.
defend it at the
Kelly
planning board
just
presentation.
told us she went online to see how.
Yes, I will. Apparently, that's my new job.
You are.
We
It
could
looks like.
Okay.
We could
Kelly
word
will
cloud
defend it at the
through.
planning board
Just say it's the best way of using the program.
Right, so, okay, next, is somebody want to try to write an executive summary when we're done?
That is way not my forte.
We'd have to see how we're doing on the budget to see if I could, because we hadn't planned on that.
Any takers to try to write
Well,
an executive summary?
Probably couldn't put it together as well as Tara could, but something to go with just clarity on these are just a guideline, suggestions of the definition, maybe the definition of what this master plan is. You
What
know,
was
just,
the purpose and
Purpose
an
and-
outline
right.
of each chapter? What each chapter is
you know,
for?
and really just something, so when, as we go through this, and even we go through this with the planning board and with the public,
Mhm.
when they start with, you know, well, with the whole binding and everything, okay, then we can refer them, you know,
Back.
back to the executive summary. Just go back, it's not, read the executive summary. That's the beginning of it.
Right.
That
Mhm.
it's a suggestion, something
Well,
to
what
that
we
effect.
have had in the beginning of the plan in chapter 1.
So
Terrible.
my feeling was that I thought that chapters 1 and 2 was pretty much an executive summary.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that and the action plan.
So
spreadsheet.
I have this little blurb that I tried to put together. I meant to send it out before the meeting, but that didn't happen. I will send it out tomorrow and maybe we can forward it out and we can tweak it
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
something. It just kind of says what the master plan is about, you know,
Yeah.
how we're compiling information, why we're compiling information. So I'll send that out to Tara and Jessica tomorrow and they can, Jessica can
Some sort of
distribute it.
a brief
Just
summary,
like a starting point.
a brief summary of
I
what it
invite,
is. Yeah.
I invite, you know, you to change it and tweak it.
And
Yeah.
for clarity, because they were bringing up like court cases. They were talking about like, well, this could be brought to court. and
Yeah.
It's a suggestion, but
Yeah,
I think if-
exactly.
if
It's
we
a
make it
guidance.
real
They need
clear
to
that-
understand it's a
yeah.
guideline. It's a,
Well, and again, I also think because we started with the quote unquote action
Mm-hmm.
plan.
Yeah.
So if you take somebody who hasn't fully read, so they don't understand what we're actually discussing,
Right.
and we start with this plan that has the word
Mm-hmm.
action in front of it, and then that's all they see, they're knee jerk reacting instead of having a
Right.
thoughtful,
Right.
you know, thought about it.
Mhm.
It's more of a knee jerk reaction, was my opinion.
Mhm.
So
It seemed like I mean, I don't know, my thinking is a little circular on it because it seems like I heard a couple of them asking for like the high points or the recommendations to be in there too, but how do you pick? I mean, that's the goals and vision, right? Otherwise, how do you pick some action items out of others? And
right.
you know what I'm hearing you guys talk about is really beefing up section 1.1, purpose of the master plan.
Yeah, and again, so like when we get into public and this, you know, when they're using words as binding and court and
Those are
and
scary words.
legislation and
Yeah.
these are strong, this is some strong words. And if we can say, please refer back to 1.1, you know,
Yes.
that explains the purpose. No, it's not. And because otherwise it just kept coming back to that. And you don't want a meeting being eaten up by accusations that
Right.
don't even,
but
you
it
know,
doesn't play.
it doesn't, right. So okay, look at one, it says it's not, let's move on and
Right.
let's keep going. So, because otherwise, yeah, it just, they kept bringing it up and
At one point about the zoning, it was like, why do you want to change the zoning? And something about us wanting to change, like us being the reason, like.
That
it
being
was
the
our
reason
thought
why.
As a
Yeah.
committee,
Right.
that the zoning was changing.
Hmm.
And so at one point I just wrote there, hey, I know the least amount zoning out of anybody at this table, just to try to assert, like, that's not what this is about at
No,
all. And it
it-
couldn't be further from the truth.
Right, it's only
But
suggesting.
I said that just so I could try to,
yeah.
because I felt it was the simplest, most direct way to kind of say, that's not what this is about.
It really isn't. That's up to the zoning amendment committee. And that's what they discuss and discuss on the amendments, and something can be suggested and bring it up in order to see if
was
that's what,
discussed.
and that's all it is.
But
But it
Well,
kept
it's-
going back to that.
But
Yeah,
that committee also is advisory to the planning board, and
Yes,
and the zoning amendment should be driven by the master plan that the planning board adopts.
yes.
well, we're lucky that Paul is not only a selectman, but he's also a ZAC committee person as well.
Which will be starting soon.
Yes, so
Yeah.
he can tag team that.
Yes, yes, that's
Or
what.
double down on it, I should say.
So we're gonna see if we can beef up 1.1. Kelly has some notes to share with us, and we'll kind of keep an eye on as we get closer to the end, whether we think an executive summary would make sense, or would it be misleading a little bit?
Mhm.
Okay, sounds good. Everybody okay with that?
Yes, that's
Yep.
fine.
Okay, so we'll move on then.
So my next set of notes were about the natural resource chapter, and I kind of mixed in the notes are about the text with the action items because they, in part to remind myself that they need to line up. If we change something in the action plan, we need to change it in the text. So
This one regarding phosphorus, Russ sent me an email. And he said that we could find the data from the Merry Meeting study and from UNH.
yeah, and we cited
Correct.
those in the text.
Okay,
But it seemed like they wanted the numbers and graphics more to illustrate it. So I mean, I think I'll see about doing that.
So,
okay.
Okay.
so just, and I brought up a little bit of this last night. Do they have, is Winnipesaukee tested regularly?
Yes,
You know, so we should be able to get, and that's New Hampshire Lakes that does the testing for that?
UNH.
UNH, okay, so we should be able, if that's the data that they're looking for,
We should have it here.
yeah.
Yeah, we all have access to it. Part of the problem is that Alton stopped participating 5 years ago. So the last report at some point, and the last report was 2017. So
I see, so each town has to participate, and then, so that like Alton Bay hasn't been tested since 2017?
Excuse me,
no, that's the last report, but I'll circle back to those documents that we used as a resource and see if it would be easy to pull out some data or graphics.
It has been, Merrimeeting River has been tested.
Okay.
Wentworth has been tested.
Okay,
Yeah, but I think my sense was they were saying, prove it to us that we need to regulate things around the lake more.
Right.
Yes.
strictly.
and just to give you some background where I was coming from, I live on Half Moon Lake, and we have our water tested throughout the summer, once or twice a month throughout the summer, and we bring it to we have 2 meetings every year, and we bring it to the meeting, the phosphorus levels, the inlets where it's at, and it's pretty extensive, but same reason. So that's why we come up with the recommendations when the phosphorus levels are high. Don't use fertilizer on your lawn, or don't have your lawn near the lake, and here's the reason why, because these levels are high in these locations, but we test regularly. That's why I was asking if the bay was tested regularly,
So,
and I can see what they were looking
it
for. They're
usually
looking
is
for some
every
kind
year.
of reason why.
right, so my thought was that we don't have anything that we were aware of as of last night since 2017,
Right.
but
It
Tom
has.
Divney, who was with the Conservation Commission, is our new lakes layperson, so he's been testing. And I believe, I know he tests clarity, and I assume that's what he,
The drop is clarity, yeah.
Yep.
When you can't see it anymore,
Right.
that's how many feet.
so
of
I know he
clarity you
does
have.
that, and I'm pretty sure that he's picking up the testing and everything as well.
Yeah.
I thought that's what he said.
Yeah.
I
And-
think it'd be helpful in the next thing about, just to respond to that, we can't really just use previous reports and current data because it goes through quality control and through UNH. So
What I could do is I can check with the town administrator and get the most recent records that were taken, that were done by the committee last year.
okay,
Yeah, because it can promote help milfoil grow, and I mean, there's all
Oh, yeah.
kinds
To
of
that.
Yep.
issues, and we ran into the same thing on our lake where people wanted information. We ended up have tested, and we give them the information, and
Yep.
Mhm.
you know, and they have been getting better in the last few years. You know,
That's
with-
what we do up
with
at
it.
Hills Pond
Yeah.
in Sunset. That's
Yeah.
what they do, yeah. So Paul's gonna look into that. and
Yes,
Sarah's
I'll look
looking
into
that. Okay,
so I think for
Recent data.
the next one, because they come up with, gee, out there are other ways to manage nutrients, and I'm hearing that some other lakes in town are right. It sounded like you had something you could send me as an example of how Half Moon manages it.
Yeah, yeah, I can get you. Yeah,
no, that would be great.
yeah.
I think, being able to suggest something like that for Lake Winnipesaukee with an example that's going on in town already is going to be real helpful.
Mhm.
So This next one about the surface water setbacks versus the wetland setbacks.
I'm gonna just make a note to run what I do by Russ on that too.
Okay.
Yeah. I looked and they have different headings. And speaking of headings, what, did you have an idea?
I didn't, I don't. I just know that it was definitely something that was brought up by multiple people. At both meetings, somebody was confused between the surface water setbacks versus the wetland setback. So I don't know how
Yeah.
I don't know if we just reiterate a couple times within the paragraph what it's for, even if we're just repeating, or I don't know.
My artwork is not very artistic, but I could try to do some kind of diagram,
That would help.
maybe, or
Or
Yeah, I think it
even,
would help.
okay, I'll do a diagram, and then if I have to do some rearranging so the sections are near each other, closer to each other, I'll do that.
okay.
I'm gonna try a diagram. Commit. All right. So it's too bad that Russ is not present, because he would have a lot to say about this, and he would have last night too, about changing from 100 feet to 50 feet. But I heard consensus
Yes.
last night on that, so
And the consensus from the planning board, for those that weren't in attendance, was the state requirement is 50-foot
50 feet.
setback. So they didn't want to,
They don't want to.
they don't want to be anything
No.
different from the
Just
state.
keep it the
which is
same
fine.
as the state. Go with the state
Yeah,
guideline of
yeah.
50 feet.
And I would say, I guess this is a good a spot as any, it was mentioned that somebody did read this thoroughly, and they did think it was heavily on the conservation side.
Yes, that
Hmm?
was mentioned.
So
yes.
that was mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay.
that's the thing. I mean, that the natural resource chapter is supposed to be.
Yes, I don't know if it was just, but that was, I think, his comment about overall. So I don't know if that was just that or not, but it was said like that. So I just wanted to,
Okay.
So when we have background information that cites a source saying 100 feet is necessary, do you think it's okay to add, if I add some text there saying that 50 feet might be more acceptable to voters because it's what the state does? Can I go ahead and just say that?
I mean, you could, but I really don't think that they're not gonna go for that. I don't think.
No, they're not. They're.
Well, we can't, I mean, how do we document the need for the vegetative buffer? All of the studies show 100 feet.
So if you have, okay, so then, you know what? Put it together, show the studies, and throw it out there again.
I mean, they're in here. That's what we did. We said that, trying to find the section here in my notebook. Page 3-5 in the May draft. I don't know which one it is in the one you have. I made sure to print out the same draft they had so I could find my way around, but it's in the surface water quality section in 3.2, where we talk about buffers for wetlands and surface waters and
Surface
studies. And I mean, I don't want to ditch that and pretend that we think 50 feet is adequate. I think, man, I guess my recommendation, and I tried to say this last night, is maybe we don't talk about how many feet in the action item. Maybe we go ahead and have the text that says you need 100 feet and try to find some more general language. So we're not saying 100, but we're not saying 50. But we just say to create a vegetative buffer.
Actually leave the numbers out. I don't know.
Do you guys have thoughts on that from a planning board perspective?
Usually they want footage.
That
right? I
Like
mean,
they always want footage.
they always want
They
footage.
want to see it.
They want to see, yeah, it's not just
Yeah.
that gray area of just, creative.
A little more
vegetative.
specific.
Yeah, they want real
So,
specific.
I mean, it would be for them to argue about later, I guess is what I was thinking, that Russ can make his pitch for 100 and
Mm.
somebody else can make the pitch for 50 and or we could say at least 50.
I'm up on the air on that one simply because they were pretty like
Yeah,
dead set against it as the board.
That wasn't gonna fly at all.
So, but it is our section, so I don't know.
All right, so I'll look at the language and see what I can do. Try to make it make sense by referencing the state 50 feet.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
thank you.
Don't mention voter acceptance.
Thank you on this next one that you looked up Guilford zoning ordinance.
Yeah, I don't know what they were talking about. You kept saying, oh, we should do what Guilford does, and they don't have anything.
Wow,
And what is this?
So when we had discussed at our
The
last, one of the
ridge
meetings
line.
about the ridge line.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I remember that.
Most of the planning board was hard no on implementing any regulatory anything.
On
even-
hillsides
even
or
as-
ridge
Even
lines.
as a suggestion. And Scott kept referencing that Guilford was doing something,
Well,
their ridge line.
it wasn't, I don't think it was the whole, it was definitely a couple of people on the planning board that were really dead set against big fat no on that ridge line.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I
and
said,
then-
but Scott had
yeah.
mentioned the Guilford.
He mentioned that Guilford had something that was,
Right.
made everybody happy, but it was language that was there
Mhm.
that defined it and, was more acceptable and they were an absolute hard no until Scott brought this up and then we'd look at that, but you're saying there's no language there, right?
Oh, there isn't. They manage steep slopes. They don't allow cut and fill on 25% or more slopes, and they have some. The one place they called it 30%, another place they call it 25. They have a mistake in there, but they manage how much in between 15 and 25 can be part of the minimum lot size. So it's more about stormwater, not scenic impact.
Right.
I mean, so, they didn't, I had trouble getting across that when we were talking about design guidelines, we were talking about them being part of the regulations, not just a suggestion, but if you
Right.
want to do this development, you have to follow these design guidelines. That's just how we talk about it in planning.
Um,
So that was part of the confusion. But if it's regulatory, it sounded like they don't want it in there.
Right,
Do we know if there are any other towns that might have language that would address this?
Oh, there's a ton. I helped write the model that they used, that the state published, but it didn't seem to, was it just me? I thought they don't want to regulate.
no, so
Sounds like they don't
this
regulate.
one was what I was alluding to earlier, that it was a hard no, and then after some discussion,
Hmm.
maybe they would look at it. So, the hillside and ridge line, and Tara did say regulate, because we were trying to preserve that ridge line just somehow. So that was one of those knee-jerk reactions, oh, you're gonna try to regulate
Yeah, they don't like. that word.
building.
No,
Right,
the
and-
word regulate is not
Right,
good.
and they did not want to hear that at all. So then it was, well, Guilford might, they're doing something over there, maybe we could look into that. And then they came around to, okay, well, that can be up for discussion.
Right. And maybe they got the town wrong. Maybe instead of Guilford, it's Gilmington. I mean, who knows?
Right.
That's why I'm suggesting looking at other
Which
towns.
is a
Well,
great
yes.
suggestion, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, but,
I was
you
gonna
know,
ask
the-
the same thing, if
Yeah.
there's other towns.
The
If they-
state planning office does a list of all these things, and they do the inventory every year, so we can just get the list. So,
Yeah.
so do we want to try softening it to be, look at what other towns have done and
Yes,
We already
yes,
said
Yes,
yes.
bigger.
please, yes.
Yeah.
they were all consider, none of these were, we're definitely doing this thing, that the zoning ordinance were all written as things to consider
Right.
already, but
Yeah.
Yeah, if you would do that, I think that would be a really good.
Mhm.
well, I wasn't suggesting that I look at what other towns have done. I was suggesting that I soften the wording so that the recommendation is to look at what other towns have done.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yep, that's fine.
Because when it goes to the planning board, then they can take it upon themselves to look at other
right, at
towns.
that point, if
Right.
they want to address
Right.
it, then you do all that
Right,
background.
right. We're just
research.
recommending you do that.
Yeah,
Right.
Yes.
No, that makes sense.
right.
Tara,
And I think that
soften.
might have been maybe a confusion last night of, these are the suggestions that are to be considered in the future.
Right.
Right.
So it's not like, just because it's written here, that's not written in stone.
Right.
And that's
And you
not,
don't have to do it right now.
right.
Right.
And I think that might have been a little cloudy last night.
Yes.
I think they keep referring back to this is how it's gonna be.
Right.
This is
'Cause they're
what's
like,
happening.
That's telling
This
me
is
right
what we're gonna
there.
do. This is what
Right.
we're adopting.
Yes.
And that's what they need to understand is
Yes.
it's
Right.
suggesting.
Yes.
Right.
And
Right.
again,
Good.
without
Yep.
reading it beforehand,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think stuff in the tolerable stuff throughout the document is gonna help with that, because it will give us the opportunity to introduce each little group of recommendations with, here are some things to consider in the future, right? To address this problem.
yes,
And language will be there all the time.
sounds good.
They seem okay with regulating the lighting in part of site plan review. And there was discussion about adding the color temperature.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I'll just make sure that we've enabled that with our recommendations.
Yes.
Yeah, looks good. Thank you.
This is just language for you to file away somewhere, Jessica, that we all use. This is the language from a lighting model that I like, because it's kind of simple.
Yeah,
I appreciate
it.
that you did that, Tara, that you tried to, like, you looked at Guilford zoning, you put that in there, that you put the language of the lighting. That's appreciated.
Yeah, because I just thought not everybody might have known what he was talking about when he was saying 3,000. It's basically saying it has to be a warm temperature.
Right.
Right. 3,000 K or less.
So this next thing, number 38, is the direction was to change it to be encourage, not reference regulations.
They wanted regulations for commercial, but suggestions for residential. I think
Yes.
That's what they,
Right.
yeah.
And that's really the difference of whether you regulate lighting in the zoning ordinance or in the site plan regulations. You put it in the zoning ordinance if you want it to apply to everything. You put it in the site plan regulations if you just want it to apply
Okay.
to multifamily and non-residential.
Mhm.
I feel it was pretty split down the middle. I don't know about, because it's already in a site plan ordinance, right? The site plan not regulation, but for commercial.
For
Yeah.
commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
already in there for
Yeah,
commercial,
so-
yeah.
But they did not want, they just wanted a suggestion if you're building a home or
Yeah,
a
they
garage or
didn't-
something
They
like
didn't like
that.
the implement. Yeah.
Right,
Having-
maybe, because I know he has, informational pamphlets
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
building permits and sort of the process of stuff, and it could
Yes.
just be a educational,
Yes.
Right, that you don't want the lighting directed
And
towards.
this is just stuff you
Yeah,
can hand out.
and
when
it
you
Public
hand out the
areas.
Site plan
Yeah,
or the.
because
you
he
know.
already hands out stuff with like
Mhm.
building
Yeah.
packets and
Yeah.
stuff. It could just be a little blurb of,
Yep.
Mhm.
just to pay attention to or consider,
Yep.
the impact of outward facing lights or something.
Yes, yes.
It might also be.
Facing the public
Yeah.
or roads or that are shining up into the sky.
Right.
Yeah, just not a regulation, but a mention of it to
Yes.
consider it.
I bet there's something existing with some group like Audubon or something about its impact on wildlife too.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I think
Sure.
a lot of people are more apt to consider that for some reason, as opposed to, is it bothering drivers or their neighbors?
I'll be honest with you. So this past spring, there was a lot of chatter online about dark skies for the migratory birds.
Yeah.
And
Was
people, yeah, and there was a lot of chatter. People were implementing for
right,
that
yeah.
reason.
Yeah,
So they would make sure that they turn their lights off at a certain time or they,
they'll go.
so I agree with that, Tara.
Yeah.
End up going the wrong way.
Historic, we didn't give them the text because we didn't want to confuse them by giving them the May version and then the updated one that had historic in it. But we did have them look at the 3 action items for historic and they were good with those. So at the beginning of the land use chapter, there was some discussion about population and this is kind of a, how much time do you guys think it's worth spending on it? Do we want to dig into the population numbers any further? Or did we cover it adequately to introduce the land use topics? It's just kind of a level of effort question, I think.
I think it's fine the way it is.
Yeah, it seems like what they seem to be digging in, what I got out of that last night was more the history of the town and the changes in population 100 years ago is what they seemed to be talking about, which would go under more historic than land use, right?
There was, there was,
It would.
To piggyback on that
Yeah.
thought, I also felt that they kept going back to historic numbers being at higher
Yeah.
at the turn of the century when the railroad was still in and
Mhm.
things like that, as
Yeah.
opposed to the numbers declined after that. And that will, I think that's also what they're looking at going forward for future building or
Right.
like that number right there, when you talk about a new school or
Mm.
something like that, so I think it's okay the way it is, but I kind of think that was what that was about.
Yes, because they did say that they didn't feel that the numbers that we had were correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
They thought they
Yes.
were low.
well, because they're pre-COVID.
Yeah, they thought that there were more. There should be more.
Did they only reflect full-time residents? or-
Residents.
But we also don't have a way to, I don't think, to capture COVID migrants.
Right.
No, and that was, yeah, because
That was-
obviously
that
we
was
think
brought
it's
up.
higher since COVID, but we
Right.
really can't we can't
One of the,
know the
It's a hard
number.
thing to project.
I think I might
Follows the
have,
census, which was done in
yeah,
2020.
I might have
Right.
mentioned this before, when I worked the census in 2010. It was a major point to make sure that you only got full-time residents counted. And the other thing that got counted was residencies. So I don't know if we can break it out that way or not, if that information's available from the census.
I don't think we need to.
No,
Yeah,
I don't
but-
think
but
it
is
really-
I don't know what difference it would make.
Well,
Yeah.
I think,
probably wouldn't be significant.
I think a reason for misunderstanding what the numbers reflect is that people that think the numbers are low, they're looking at the summertime population, and
Sure.
which is different from full-time.
Oh, yeah, like 4 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Or, yeah, 5 times, yeah.
But I think what they might be concerned with is we are changing. We are changing as a town. We have longer residents staying longer, people that are staying here longer than what used to be cut and dry. You had the snowbirds. Now snowbirds are tending to stay longer and staying here. So,
It used to be
so we
three-
are, our population is more stabilized.
Used to be 3
Year round.
months for the vacationers. Now it's 5 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm going to say, I think we're fine the way we are. Is that a consensus? Are we good with that?
Yes.
That's
That's
fine. It's fine.
We might want to explain that there's a difference between the full-time and part-time population.
I think,
That's,
But we do introduce the table by saying year-round population.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think,
It's probably fine the way it is.
I think we're good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, you gotta put a stop at some point as to when you're gonna
Yes,
stop counting people.
yeah.
Right. Yes, otherwise you drive yourself crazy.
Right, and it's just, I mean, it is unfortunate that it would have, Bob, wouldn't it have been April 2020? And that's before we saw what the impact of COVID was gonna be. So I'm sure it is higher now, but we don't really have a way to measure it.
And I think that was a good stopping point, using that information from the census.
Yeah.
All right,
Because
So-
there's no way to get the other, anything
Right.
else.
so the next note I had was about how the room erupted when we talked about a commercial district. And how it was discussed 10 years ago, and the room was full of people opposing it. And I couldn't really get out of them what the proposal was and why it was opposed and by whom. And I think it'd be really helpful information.
I think getting that information, so just to give a little background, so we brought up the topic of changing the zoning, right? Going to a commercial zoning and doing away with the rural residential and things like that. And so that was obviously a very hot topic,
Yeah.
very hot. So first and foremost, the commercial side, when we had said maybe going up off of 28, down past Hannaford's and Meredith Village there.
Mhm.
How can you do that? There's no water out that way. You can't, like. how-
Limited
you're
ac-
asking for
limited access
curb
highway.
Stops, the limited access, and it was a real hard, that, how can you even think about putting anything out there? And then secondary, which I'm sure comes somewhere down, Action Plan 49, and eliminate the rural residential. So that was a hot topic because
Mhm.
that's the only place you can build a multifamily
Families, yeah.
dwelling.
Right.
So that was obviously a huge
And
issue.
there's
That would
three zones you can build
Right,
multifamilies on.
right. And
Right.
so obviously we as the town on multiple levels on different boards and as the master plan committee also have discussed the need for housing
Yes.
in this town. So if we're proposing changes to the zoning, we're certainly not proposing that we do away with
No.
multifamily
Wow.
area you can build
It's
multifamily
just the
dwellings.
opposite. Yeah.
Right.
It's trying to accommodate to
Right,
have more housing in the area of all kinds, whether it's small housing, whether it's multi-family housing.
right.
Uh,
So when it came to the commercial, and then it was recommended that we don't have as many curb stops,
Mhm.
things like that. And so then it was, well, shared access, and what about the problems with that? And it was, it's all about kind of the negative. And I pointed out, I mean, Scott has a multi-building dwelling, right, in downtown, and he's the landlord. So if somebody else came in and did that and rented out units, then, that he's responsible for that maintenance of that. And then you don't have those arguments. So there's plenty of opportunity there. It's not just, one person you have, so there's multiple things that you can do there. It might be a little limited, but I think just the nature of the beast of commercial, you're limited anyway.
Well,
But we did talk about,
downtown area is limited.
we specify in the text that commercial would also be for denser residential types.
Right,
Multifamily could go in there, and we specified that maybe multifamily should be allowed in the residential district with a special exception. So, I mean, we were,
so is anybody able to find or get information about how it was discussed 10 years ago and they said very large opposition from the public. I don't recall that. I've been here for, almost 20 years.
Myself too. I do recall something about it, but I wasn't active in this part of town at that time with the town hall. But I did hear that there was a lot of opposition on commercial activity
Well,
in commercial district,
the,
but I don't,
the NIMBY people are very vocal.
though.
Yes,
Not
Not
in
in my
my
backyard.
backyard,
not in
Yeah,
my
oh, yeah,
backyard.
yeah, right.
but they're very vocal. And when this kind of a thing comes up, you have to be careful how you distribute the information.
Right,
Mhm.
To make sure that you level that out
right.
some. And I think that's probably what happened 10 years ago.
Mhm.
That the loud people got heard and nobody else did.
Was that when Hannaford's came in?
No, Hannaford's, I think, was a little bit more than 10 years ago.
More like
Yeah,
12,
yeah.
12 years ago.
Yeah.
They mentioned
Yeah.
Hannaford's, that was
Yes.
the mention of
Mhm.
Hannaford's. And I wasn't sure if it was so much people packed this place
I could
because they
ask.
brought up creating a commercial zone, or there was a large commercial entity that wanted to move into the town and someone,
But-
and a lot of people said, not in my backyard.
Well, it sounded like it was like they were talking about a zoning change, but never went as far as a public hearing and proposal. Like they were just talking about it and dropped it.
By the
Jo-
way,
Jo-
if you were to ask anybody today about Hannaford, they say, oh my God, don't take that away.
That was
Right.
discussed, how
Right.
nobody wanted it, but now it's here. And
No.
I mean, you can't even
Everybody loves
imagine
it.
not having it.
Right.
The building inspector would have a good insight on this, because he was on at that time. He's been here almost 12 years, so
John?
he would know.
I'll take care of that. I'll
Okay.
talk to him.
I bet you John would be able, fill you right in on that.
Yeah, just to find out like what,
Yeah,
you know, or if there really wasn't that much, because really the area that we were talking about for commercial is right down here.
That's it.
right.
Yeah.
Or say up next, like
Yeah.
on 28 or,
And it's
or
limited.
the other direction of 28. So those are perfect, like,
And what Tom Hoops always says, we don't care if you have your business, we just don't want to look at it.
right.
So you have setbacks, yeah, you know,
Right.
so it's, and a lot of the people that have come before the planning board, sorry, that have come before the planning board, you know, it's, oh yeah, we're gonna put it back and there's gonna be
Right.
brush and we're gonna do landscaping and there'll be a road going in and that's all you're gonna see is the road going in, so.
So they did like, so when I explained that to them, like
Mm.
how we didn't want Hannaford, but Hannaford did it right because it's back
They put it in
behind
the back,
McDonald's.
yeah.
And so they came around to it, but I feel that especially in our town, because I moved here because I like Alton the way it is. That's why we moved here, right?
Sure.
So I don't want to see a big box store. And I think when
Right.
people hear commercial, they think
Yeah.
box store, factory, you know, like
Yeah.
Right.
like-
machinery, like
Industrial.
something,
Of
you know,
course,
like
no.
just industry. And that's
Mm.
not necessarily maybe what they want, but it's probably the first thing that they
It's in the
think
back of
about,
their mind. They want to.
right? So if you hear the word commercial, they automatically think big,
Right.
you know, but it's not,
Mhm.
Or-
it's not big develop. It's more, you know,
Mhm.
just the area to put business.
Or
Yes.
they're worried about becoming a Concord or a Rochester,
Yes.
you know, as opposed
Exactly.
to just being an.
Yep.
Exactly.
Right,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
I think that's.
Don't want to have Route 11
Right,
in
Yeah.
Rochester.
Like,
They
for
don't want to
instance-
see that. They don't want to see the strip
Right.
stores and car
And
dealers.
I think a good way to help correlate is maybe kind of like we have the sign on 28
Mhm.
coming down from Wolfboro, and it says business district.
Hmm.
So if we could try to, you know, somehow explain that it's not commercial as in big or, you know,
No.
box store type thing, but just business.
or change it to, instead of get rid of commercial and put business district.
Yeah.
Just, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Just keep
that
it
might-
simple.
that
Don't
might soften
use
the
the
whole
word
thing.
commercial.
Yeah.
Business districts.
That might breeze right by them.
Can you think of a word that would, because I can't think of any other commercial that would cover multifamily housing too, so.
Mm. No, but I feel that
Think on that.
maybe in our explanation to the planning board,
Hmm.
that would help maybe. And then in our explanation to the public going forward, when we have those one-on-one conversations or we have, you know, public input, we can try to bring in that phraseology, you know, it's more of the business district. If you're like, depending on what somebody comes at you with.
Right.
Oh, we don't want the box store. That's not what it's about. It's about business.
You got an awful lot of people that said they did want more business in
Right.
Yes.
I think it's
For-
more
for
commercial.
a number of different reasons. People said they wanted it for jobs. People said they wanted it for tax base,
Uh,
for opportunities to shop, and retail isn't really gonna help jobs or the tax base, but.
I don't know if they would be objected to, if you would, a industrial park,
Well, this is what I was about to say.
an industrial area that creates jobs and
mentioned
has.
Rochester.
Hmm?
You mentioned Rochester.
Mhm.
I wouldn't know about it if my son didn't work there for a while,
Right.
but they have an industrial park
Yes.
behind where
Oh, the field down there?
Home Depot is and all
Yeah,
that
I know
stuff.
exactly what you mean.
And you don't even know it's there.
No.
Unless you go there.
See, that's a different entity to do something.
But that's the kind of thing that I think would be welcome in this town.
Yes, Yeah,
Yeah, you want to be careful about talking about an industrial. park.
I don't
and
know the terminology.
I think that we did a good job bringing those together with the explanation more, for lack of a better descriptive word, the cluster commercial zone, right? Like if we had limited access off 28, but you had one access road for multiple units. So you don't call it an industrial park, but you kind of make your zoning or something,
because it's a bad word.
right? But you try to work it around to have that develop. Like we had said, give maybe bonuses if they did the buffer area or things like that, right? So
Well, similar to what they did with over here with Hannaford's. They've got the buffer zone. You don't see it from the road or anything like that. But like you said, it's a limited access road if we go on 28A. But if it's a road that exists where it can branch off of that.
and so right now we have McDonald's, we have that whole
Mhm.
old Homestead place, right? Has a lot of business in there now, that's growing, which is great. And then we have Hannaford and Meredith Village. So even, it's not an industrial park, but it is an area where there are multiple businesses, and that's how we kind of want it.
Yeah, I think refer to the
Do-
business district instead of,
Instead of using the
probably
word
stay away from
industrial.
industrial park. Yeah.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
But
but,
even
but
so-
make it that way, that's how we want it to develop,
Yeah.
right? Type, I don't know if we can do that somehow, but
Some
you're
of,
following my thought
yeah.
process.
I do. I know there's some places that do like plastics, and they make all kinds of things. In Wolfboro, there's quite a few companies like that that have various buildings that employ probably 40 people. And they do that type of thing, but it's all enclosed in a building. It's set back from the road. You really don't see it. And they got ample parking, that type of thing, I think would be acceptable. But instead of using the term industrial park or.
Right, but I think also your explanation right there about how we've been saying the buffer and setback and things like that, when we are explaining to people the commercial zone,
Mhm.
that's what we're going to keep, I would think, continually
Oh, of course.
referencing the buffer. You don't want to see the commercial. We want to invite good quality, business. We're gonna, somehow try to do that, but
Mhm.
keep it in an area to keep the aesthetic of the town.
I think a term that could be introduced here would be the concept of visibility. That these things are not unwelcomed, but that you don't want to see them.
like Tom
And
says.
I think that the idea of what's visible as you're going through, on major roads and stuff
Mhm.
versus what is here, but you don't even know it.
Exactly.
Um,
There's other states that have done that successfully.
So I'll just tell you a funny
areas.
little story. So, a number of years ago, 25 years ago, my husband and I had made a trip with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law. We had gone away for a weekend down the Cape.
I was just gonna say the Cape.
Okay, down the Cape, and we're staying at this great little place, and they need real coffee. They're looking for Dunks or something, and we couldn't find one,
Mhm.
which is unheard of in Massachusetts, especially. Okay, so we literally had driven by it 3 or 4 times. It was so well hidden,
Mhm.
you didn't even realize that a
Oh, was
Dunkin'
there.
Donuts was there, and it was a Dunkin' Donuts.
When you-
Okay, that place is hopping on the weekend. Did not even realize it was there, and we drove by it. It was great.
I was just gonna mention that same thing, because down the Cape, my brother lived down the Cape for a long time in Hyannis, Barnstable, and Sandwich. You drive through all those areas. Downtown, you'll have your little shops and your coffee shops and little thing, but you'll drive through an area. It looks like a residential zone. You don't even know it because of the way that they built their buildings.
Yes.
And they're off to their parking is not visible from the road. You have to park behind the building.
Last night's meeting, I think this is great but I think we just maybe want to be a little bit cautious and sensitive to what we call it, what we word it. Because
Yes.
what I got from last night, they kept talking about, they were very standoffish about naming a commercial zone because they kept mentioning, remember they kept big fat checks, writing a big fat check. These companies come in, and once you give them the green light to come in, they're going to come in and they're going to get their way no matter what rules we put in front of them. They're going to write a big
Yes.
fat check to the
Yes.
state, and they're going to get, that's what Hannaford's
And that
doing.
was Hannaford, yes.
So-
It's a terrible conversation.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
It was.
Yes, it was.
And
That was brought up because of the access off of
right,
28.
28,
Right.
where
This is
we are
limited access,
suggesting, where we're suggesting putting the commercial.
right. But, and I think maybe we just need to be just more cautious about how we word it,
Yes,
you know, more than anything, I think,
yes.
you know?
What's important?
Yeah, I mean, you could even, I mean, I'll think more about that and I'll just read some other towns who have a wider variety of districts just to see if anything
Yes,
looks appropriate, but you could even call it like, you could have village 1, 2, and 3, right? You could, it's not really a village, but we could call it a village,
Mhm.
more acceptable to people. It could be, right, different village zones with different standards. So,
okay,
Yeah. It's
And
it's a tough subject.
it is. I appreciate you bringing that up because we have discussed it so much that I was going to say to Tara, so we've just thrown all of this against the wall for you. Can you put something together with good wording for us?
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, well, I'm gonna try.
No, it has to be capital.
I think the planning board's looking for something that's quantitative, and you're not gonna get it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's gotta be qualitative, more than that. And I think the concept about appearance and accessibility,
Mhm.
maybe that's the way it gets approached,
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
rather than trying to stick a number on it.
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, so this next one in the list is just a continued conversation about that. I don't think there's anything different there.
Right, so the two huge sticking points was the commercial, mainly because of the limited access off of 28, and that was a suggestion that where we put it. And then eliminating the rural residential was really the
yeah.
hot
Mhm.
topic.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
because they were like, that's the only place you can have multifamily dwellings. And
Mhm.
that's not what we were suggesting. Obviously, we were not suggesting we change some zoning and nix something else. It was just adjusting the zoning to work better for what we have in the
Yep.
town and how we want to see it grow. So when we next present to the planning board, we need to definitely show where those multi-dwelling, buildings could be. We will
Mhm.
need to,
Be a little more
black and
specific.
white them with that and say, this is, we are proposing that we put the commercial district or whatever here,
Right.
here. And these are the other areas that you can have multi-unit dwellings.
Did anyone from the planning board have a suggestion? Was
Leave
there
it
any input?
Oh, yeah, leave it alone.
Yeah, they did. They said,
Yeah,
leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
Leave it the way it is.
alone
Leave it the way it
That's how
is.
they said it.
That's what
Okay.
they
Oh,
said.
this was a
Yep.
hot
Yeah.
topic.
It
But
was-
not,
Okay.
not being in the room, I couldn't tell if it was,
Solution.
how much of the steam was coming from one person. I mean, you guys are saying.
Two,
they,
yeah.
Yeah, it was two.
It's two.
It was two
Yeah.
people. and-
Oh,
Same
two?
two.
So that's not a consensus, but you do need them on board.
Yeah, and then it was mentioned by the chair to try to look at things in more of an objective way, as, more of a, from your job, more of a professional from your job
Yeah, that went
perspective, as
over well.
opposed to a personal, and that
So
did not go over well.
That didn't go over well.
Mhm.
But so I think it landed on this next point in the list.
Not to make it basically in a nice way, not to make it personal, keep it professional as
Mhm.
far as your job goes. And that didn't
But
go-
I think what Drew landed on was that we don't take it out, but that we change the wording to make clear that we're asking the planning board to review the rural residential district and consider incorporating pieces of it in other adjacent districts.
Yeah.
So,
Under special exception?
Yes, or again, if we.
no,
No, but how it would be allowed in other areas. So if we
Right,
change
okay,
the zoning,
yeah.
it would automatically be in other areas.
right, when I look at the map, because I started all this trouble by looking at maps of your zoning and your current land use and steep slopes, wetlands and roads and water. And I mean, I could see pieces of the rural residential that could make sense to hitch on to the Alton Village, could make sense to hitch on to the Alton Bay, and could make sense to hitch on to the commercial or be commercial, and then some of it to go to rural. But I picked up that one individual's concern was that the rural residential is 1 acre zoning.
Yep.
But if we're bringing some of it to these other districts, that should balance it out. I mean, I think he felt that there's some scheme to turn it all to rural, and then we just need to make clear that that's not what we're saying. We want to expand the area available for denser development.
So again, we just need to make sure that we change our wording.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Is that the real issue? Is rural residential a misnomer of sorts? In that maybe it's better put as being multi-use?
I'd love to see that zone go away, just how we said.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's neither here nor there.
Yeah, that's gonna need some thought.
But so I think for now, the agreement was to change the wording to review it and consider incorporating it in other districts.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll get rid of the word
Consider.
eliminate. We won't say eliminate. That's when everything blew up.
Yeah.
And I think as a general comment, I had written down that for all of the zoning change language, we need to
Yes,
make sure we're saying it that way.
yes.
And then this next thing was just kind of a random comment that you said in the last 5 minutes.
Yes.
About curb cuts and driveways in the village. And I thought too, I don't know how you do that while encouraging density.
I kind of think, I think it was more of an observation ish, because he said, I noticed when I drive through, the village area that there's so much limited parking because of the cutouts and the driveways.
Mhm.
But that just brings in that it's a residential commercial area, and that's why you have so many cutouts, because it
Exactly.
is a mixed use area.
Mhm.
Was there a need for more public off-street parking?
Oh, yeah, in the village
Well,
area.
That's something that we worked on as far as School Street and Church Street, is to try to add more off-street parking. And we did, but could there be more? Yeah, but it's a little difficult on School Street, especially where you first turn onto it off of Main Street, because if any cars are there, it can
Right.
create
We
an
have very
accident.
limited.
It's
area.
limited.
Yeah.
It's limited space.
So I think that that Drew mentioned it because we had talked about the curb stops, excuse me, earlier, along,
The cut curbs, yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about increasing the activity in the village and there's a lack of parking, we should say something about that.
Well,
Right. There's a
and-
potential for more parking,
There is.
but I don't know how far that's. I don't
It's
know
up in
how
the
far
air.
in the
That's
works
up in the
that
air.
is, yeah.
That's and not even mention it right now, but there is some
Yeah,
options out there for more parking.
Because I would like to, like, in theory, I would like to mention it because it's a need, like the village area needs more off-street parking, especially if
Yes.
we're going to encourage
people to come downtown.
business
yeah.
growth and people to come into the village area. But I don't have an action for that.
No,
But
Right
if we
now,
say,
Right,
only
so we
way
can't
is
put
that-
it in here without putting it in the action
the only
plan,
way
and
is
I
the
don't
town
know.
purchasing extra area to put parking, and that's.
but we can, I think it's important to identify it as a need. If it's something on your radar that you keep an eye out for, you want the master plan to have said you need it.
Then I would suggest that it go in there because it's definitely a need.
It is a
in my
need.
opinion. Okay.
We definitely need more parking in the
Right.
village.
I mean, it was just discussed at Monday's select board meeting with
That's right.
the car show that's going to be in town on, during Old Home Week on that last
Right,
Sunday.
right out front here.
Right.
And
Because of the parking situation, so that was actually
Mhm.
discussed. So the parking downtown is a need, so yes, I do think that it should go in.
So we can,
We're in
the
consensus.
action item could be to continue to identify opportunities.
Yes, thank you. See, Tara said it's curb cuts, so that's why I keep saying that, okay?
I mean, one thing I didn't want to say, because I know I was correcting people a little too much last night, more than I want to be as a consultant, but the curb cuts, driveways and on-street parking are great for traffic calming. Like, those are the things that make people slow down when they're going through the village.
Mhm.
Mm.
There's a real plus to that. So, all right, the next thing was there was nobody on board, I think, for increasing the minimum lot size in the Lakeshore residential zone.
No, not anybody.
Because Russ wasn't there.
Yeah,
Because Russ was.
Yeah.
and we were talking about, that was brought up
To
because
cross it off? I think,
They
was
said-
that one to cross off?
They want
Yes,
to take,
they
it
didn't-
Yeah,
they-
we're just,
that
we're
right
not even rewording it, we're eliminating it.
yeah.
says eliminate.
It says I got.
Eliminate,
I got removed, yeah. on my
Yeah.
notes.
says eliminate
Said
right
to
there.
remove
Yeah,
it.
that was what they said.
Yeah, there just didn't seem to be any way to save that, so.
It was
Eliminate,
number 51,
yep,
Bob.
Plan 51.
And if you recall, we had discussed that because of the few camps, like children camps that are left around the lake. But it was said if you sold off a camp and you broke it down into lots anyway, that the water is gonna kind of like a wash. No pun intended, but that was kind of stated. So they just wanted it removed altogether.
Right, it would be broken out of the minimum
Right.
on a subdivision.
Right.
So, and that's kind of a nice thing that if you can get the flexible zoning in there, you could get people to concentrate the homes away from the water. So that my next note was a reminder to myself to get rid of where we said open space subdivision, to change it.
Yep.
We've been talking with the alternative housing committee about calling it flexible housing.
And I think that's good to have that continuity as well.
Oh,
Is that, we're gonna call it flexible housing?
flexible housing?
Or flexible zoning?
That's what I had suggested that seemed to be well accepted at the last meeting.
Flexible
In-
housing?
Instead of using
Okay.
open
Or
space.
or flexible zoning. What do you think, Jessica?
I like that.
Zoning or housing?
I like that better.
I do as well. I'm sorry, Tara.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's an ordinance that talks about housing.
Yeah, but then we put housing in the word and automatically a lot of people think you mean for some reason subsidized, so.
Yeah, can we just, yeah, let's just stick with zoning,
Yeah,
flexible zoning.
yes,
Flexible zoning.
yes.
And I'll reword everything
And I-
for
and that-
alternative housing committee.
It sounds better that way.
And then we had talked about, I'm trying to, because I started work with the alternative housing committee while I'm still working with you guys on the master plan, I need to remind myself to circle back and talk about housing opportunities as one of the reasons that we want to recommend flexible zoning. We only talked about it as a natural resource protection gig, but you also, I think what we'll be talking about at the next alternative housing committee meeting is maybe offering a density bonus for small homes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I need to just update that language so it's two stay lined up.
okay.
Lois, did I miss anything? Sounds like several of you were
No,
there.
I thought when it came out today and I read it, I was really, it was right on and I appreciated that you had it together.
Oh,
So-
Comment, Bill?
That was a lot in.
Comment?
Well, you were there last night.
Yeah. It was interesting.
I'm sure all the planning meetings are interesting.
Yes, they can be.
So are there any other questions or comments about the paper, about last night's meeting notes with the planning board? Anything else to add? Questions, comments?
Oh, I think we covered it.
Okay, I think so as well, but I just want to make sure
So I was just
before we move
looking
on.
at my
Okay.
Notes over here.
I think
Solid.
you guys covered it quite well. Tara did a good job.
So I think we're good, Tara, to move on.
Okay.
So we'll move on to checking on chapter 6.2, community facilities.
Yeah, so I received a whole bunch of stuff from Paul today.
Can we just back up for a second? So there was a comment regarding chapter 3, so on page 3,
Oh, yes.
there was that note about the soils around the lake
Yes.
are not well drained.
I had that as a note as well.
I'm sorry, I made that note in my copy of the text, so I missed it
Okay.
this morning.
So I just,
I've got it,
that's
I've
fine.
got it scribbled in here.
I'm three,
Is
three.
it 3-3?
For catching that.
Was it 3-3 or 3-2 or 3-3?
3-3, it's up in. there.
Mine's on
Yeah.
3-3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Page, hold on.
First
I didn't-
paragraph. Yeah.
Oh, page 3-3.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Page,
Yeah.
yeah.
I read it section.
Page,
Yes, I think we're just crossing out due to the well-drained soils, right?
Well drained
Okay.
soil and it
Um,
was,
the
it was,
well-drained soil.
it was commented that it's mostly clay.
It's mostly
Yeah, I mean, so that came
it's
from,
not good drainage.
Right,
that came from somebody.
That came from Scott.
from Scott.
Okay.
No, I mean, the, the statement that septic system failures have been rare due to the well-drained soils came from staff, and I don't remember who that came from now. It was way in the beginning, but
Okay.
I'm happy to cross out due to the well-drained soils. I think that's really the point.
And I did add it to the end of our list here.
Yeah, I've got it on the text.
Okay. Anything else?
No, that was, no,
Just
that was it.
kidding.
Yeah, just that one. I just wanted to
No, I
just
appreciate
take a
that.
quick look.
Okay, so then we're ready to move on to chapter 6.2, community facilities.
Ne-
And I
Yeah.
know Paul put together some information.
And I just got it to her today. So
Well,
I don't
we're
know how
looking at it
much, I
together.
don't know how much she actually was able to put together. I have copies here that I printed.
Yeah, I think it'd be premature. I mean, I think what we should do is identify the holes and think how we're gonna get those filled, and I've got stuff from Paul, I've got some recreation stuff that Kelly forwarded along, I've got some pictures from Bob. So I've got some catching up to do on this chapter.
Okay,
I think I'll have it for you for that mid-August meeting with questions all through it of where we still need some things, but we know right now we still need town hall and fire.
Okay, yep.
I thought the fire chief sent, didn't you forward that to us?
He,
Not that stuff. It's
this is what he did.
history stuff.
That's what he did.
Oh, okay. I
Right.
was gonna ask you for a copy. so
Yeah,
thank you.
and I was gonna talk to the town administrator, which I probably will just end up talking to John about the history of town hall, I think.
That would be the best bet.
Because
I
I
mean,
have
if
to
we
talk to him
send-
about other stuff anyways.
Yeah, that would be the
And
best
Zach
bet.
stuff.
And if you
So-
don't, if you find that you're lacking something, then you can just go to the administrator. but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure he'll be able to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's enough to say it was built around blah, blah, blah. Here was a big addition. It houses these functions and it's working or it's not working and why. And I think you had all that need stuff. So
Yep.
need that for town hall and the fire stations. And I thought you and I needed to connect on transportation, Jessica, and
Yes.
were you gonna send me your work in progress to do some more with and then send back with questions?
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of clean up what I already had and try to make it.
Why don't you just, why not just send it to me and make that my job and I'll send it back to you with questions and that way we can get this ready for discussion at a mid-August meeting.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
I mean, it was, I thought last time you sent it to me, was a good point for me to take it over, I thought.
Yeah, so I'll pull it back up again and I'm gonna tweak it before I give it to you because I had just taken some, I did a little bit of research, say, went online to a website, sort of copy and pasted and kind of plugged it into an area to where, okay, I'm gonna, use some of this information to type up and I hadn't typed it yet. So I've started piecing together
Okay.
when I had free time one day.
Okay, but that's the form everybody's sending me things in. That's that's okay.
Okay, then I'll just take a quick glance at it and make sure it makes sense and I'll send it over to
I
you.
mean, I just need the information. I can make it into sentences and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's how I understood it too. That's, I think you got
Okay.
enough on the police department, Parks and Rec and, Public Works. Did
Yeah,
that,
look, yeah, I thought it looked good. I definitely have enough to work with there.
I owe you some pictures for the
That would be great.
I'll just forward them over.
Absolutely. Thank you.
transfer station,
Yeah, no, for sure.
which
Actually,
is a
I
big
can make copies.
bunch of pictures.
Do I distribute these?
And I'll retake the picture of the
Nope,
community
nope.
center.
These are the ones I
in the
made.
bay.
I can make them all
One
over
didn't
again.
come out too good.
I still have them on my computer. So you can have
Thank you,
those.
thank you.
Yes.
So I'm gonna do the best with what I have and it'll have questions in it. And we'll meet mid-August to say, all right, how are we getting those questions answered?
Okay,
We'll divide those up.
Okay.
And we'll need to talk about action items to go with the infrastructure chapter.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I may or may not be able to pull some of those out, but I'm sure there'll be more and they'll be pretty rough. So that's what we need to do, I think.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Jessica, is there something that I can help you with? I don't know. Is on anything of your to-do list?
It's also gonna take me a couple days to reformat the thing to get
Right.
the action items into the text. So
Right.
I'll try to get that done too.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything.
I just want to throw it
Yeah.
out there if you come across something, just because I know that you have a
It's-
full
yeah,
plate. so-
research in my office
Okay.
and
Right.
talking
Okay.
to John about stuff. And plus I need to talk to him about Zach's stuff anyways. So we
Yes.
need to meet anyways.
Yep.
So
That's
here's
what
a
my
That'll
impression,
pretty
I
much
just wanted
few
cover
to
more
that.
questions to
Yep.
ask him while I'm
Okay.
already sitting
I'll
with
pretty
him,
much cover that, sure.
you know? I think that'll be right. And then I'll send Tara the information
Okay,
on transportation.
okay.
One thing I just wanted to circle back to, that this issue of the community center keeps coming up, but I don't feel like we've been able to move it forward at all. Is there any way we might be able to do that? Because so many people have brought it up in, both rounds of public participation.
Which community center is this?
A community center. It
Oh,
was-
oh,
She's
okay.
saying,
Bigger one.
yes,
Talking about-
like a recreation facility of some sort,
Yeah.
because it was brought up at both.
I think reinvigorating a group to take it on is probably the approach that needs to be followed.
But I think Tara's looking specifically how we put that in that's-
I think you address it by
by
having
having that.
an organizational structure
Okay, yeah,
put together that addresses that particular need.
okay,
And I think that's the level at which you put it in the plan. And you don't talk about a solution, just identify that there's a problem there and come up with a committee or something. I hate the word committee, but come up with some kind of a
You end up on it, that's why.
working group to address the problem.
Yep.
And again, problem, and we don't know the answer to it, but we know how to get there.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And if there are, be thinking between now and the next meeting, whether there's any parameters you want to put with it, like is there anything you want to say to this group about where it should be or who it should serve, that kind of thing? So they have, have the benefits of your thoughts as direction when they start meeting.
okay.
That's just something to think about.
Okay, and I would like to just also bring up that Parks and Rec held a community forum, maybe a month ago now. I did go to that, just to get some more community input from, to hear what the community had to say. It was brought up again at that meeting as well. It was not a hugely attended meeting, I would say that, but it was brought up. So just want to throw that out there.
About a community center.
Yes.
Was it specific on age? Or
No, it was more of
or was it a community for all ages?
For all ages.
Okay.
Yep. And I think in both of this master plan survey and the other one, it was more of an all ages.
All age.
Yeah. So we can maybe put some thoughts together on that for, like, all of us can maybe come to the table with a little something to add to that next time for the next meeting on the 17th. Excuse me. Public input. Thank you. Calendar of meeting dates. So as we did state, but we will say it again, our next meeting is Wednesday, August 17th at 4 PM. September 7th at 6 PM. And then we are to present right now on September 20th at 6 PM to the planning board. So these next couple of meetings will be important. So if we could all try to be in attendance, that would be appreciated if we can manage that.
We're almost there.
We are almost there. Do we have any other questions or comments from anybody?
I have a comment.
Okay,
So we made it on the front page of the Baysider
yay.
photo contest.
Oh,
There's an ad on there.
And
for the
Jessica, thank you for
photo
putting
contest.
that together. We should have
Awesome.
mentioned that you have put together that little op-ed for the photo contest and got it in the paper for us.
Yep, so that was all on its own. I didn't talk to anybody on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But, so yeah, it was in Baysider, it's on the front page of the website.
did
There's
see it there.
there's notices around town, there's one at the post office. It just has people submit 3 photos of Alton. And people ask me like, well, what are you looking for? I'm,
Whatever you want to
don't know,
send us.
whatever you feel like.
Are
is
you
your
getting-
Best
are you getting some?
photo,
or-
I have one person that submitted a couple photos already.
Okay.
Good.
So there's that, and,
So I'm gonna, so anybody that social media is at all,
Mhm.
I was waiting for this to come out in the paper. And so maybe like this weekend, I'm gonna do a post. Hey, you can submit, hey, friends, you can submit some pictures.
Yeah.
So maybe if anybody else social medias or anything like
Sure.
that, you could do the same.
yep.
And
I shared it on
Jessica
that-
did share it on the planning
Yep.
board page, so you can just share it
Right.
from the planning board page with your own little,
Right.
you know,
And it's on the Alton community homepage as well,
awesome.
Yeah, good, good.
town's page.
Page,
Yep.
yep, awesome.
So can the Alton Business Association share, can they enter the contest?
I can bring it up at our meeting, yep.
I was asking because I noticed some good photos on your Facebook page,
Ah,
which are probably public because they're on Facebook, but they wouldn't be high enough resolution, so.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's some good, like, year-round activities.
Yep,
that-
So yeah, I'm hoping to get a pretty good selection.
yeah. And I thought that was great
Yeah.
because people like photography is a huge passion of a lot of people. So hopefully that will generate that and then we'll generate some interest in the master plan and,
Right.
you
Just
know, we
another
can
way
just think
for-
positive and it will roll
Right.
forward.
Way for
And
this
everybody will want to be on the committee to implement it.
the end. That was it.
Anything else from anybody?
The only thing I have, I mentioned it briefly at the last meeting, that I was, had a few people come to me and talk to me about schools and schooling.
Mhm.
And I guess what I'm understanding is there's a growing concern of our public school system.
Mhm.
And to see if there would be interest in another school that would be called an Institute for Classical Culture.
I'm sorry, didn't hear you.
Institute for Classical Culture. In other words, a school that goes back to basically basics of education. And having the interest of having an extra school or another school in the area, not necessarily Alton.
Would it be
Not necessar-
Would it be a public school?
It would be a public school. And it would be funded by donations and built and done by donations.
Doesn't sound like a public school.
It is. I can let you read this. It's a nonprofit organization located in the Lakes region of New Hampshire. And they're in support of educational institutions, classical and Soltric learning. So basically, it's going back to a simpler way of teaching students in school. And some of these people are concerned with the public school systems of not teaching the culture as how it was presented for many, many years. It seems like we're losing some of the information of how these children are taught. And I have a little,
Hey, do you have that electronically? Can you send it to me?
I can send it to you. I can send you a copy of this, and I can even give you a copy of
you.
this. And it was just a conversation I had. They gave me a copy of it, and I thought I'd mention it to see if it's something that we may want to mention
There's
in the master plan.
there's a lot of sensitivity about
I'm sure. That's why how,
education in general
So,
and
It's-
public education in particular,
yes,
and the fact that certain parts of our political spectrum
yes,
want to take away things more than put things in.
correct.
And
And that's the concern.
so
That's the concern.
I'm gonna insert, so sorry for the interruption. I think I'm going to say, my opinion would be, we probably don't mention it simply because it didn't come from the survey. Type,
Okay.
right? Because
All right,
all of the
well-
information that we're compiling comes from the survey.
Okay.
So then I would say,
Don't mention it in the
a
master
simple, just for a
plan.
simple, yes. No, I wouldn't mention the master plan because it didn't come from the survey and it's not something that,
Mhm.
like,
although I think there would be a place where that would fit nicely, and that's in the discussion about the region.
Mhm.
And part of the regional discussion might include mention of regional educational resources.
But it didn't sound like it is a public school if it's a nonprofit. I mean, public would mean the town's involved and town money and town voters.
Right.
Yeah, this would be privately owned, but it would accept, I guess, the concept was I was told it was public, but it really can't be.
It can't be.
It would have to be a private school, and it would
Yeah.
accept probably up to 90
And
students.
we shouldn't be making recommendations about
Okay,
private. things.
That's why I brought
This is
it.
about town money and town vote.
Sounded a lot
Okay.
like-
Town voters can
You can
vote.
hang on to that, but I'm gonna get more info on it.
Yeah.
It sounded a lot like a charter school. when we-
Right.
okay,
Yes, or a starter school, yeah.
okay,
And charter schools are
okay.
problematic right now.
Yeah, and I don't think we had anybody in
Okay.
the survey say we need a charter.
I just wanted to mention it and see what you guys thought.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or questions? Okay, so under 2 hours, I think we did pretty good.
How much of that is because we met last night?
Yes, yeah.
Or-
And we didn't have another chapter also, which was probably just as well.
Yeah, there's that.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
Second, yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Tara, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Tara.
We'll see you next time.
We went 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody.